DéObia, welcome to Cat on the Loose. It's such an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you.
As you know, I've been trying to get you here for a few years now. I think it's been 3 years because time goes by so fast. I'm not sure, but I think it's been 3 years. I did we were saying off camera, I went to one of your acting workshops at the Soho House about 3 years ago. And I fell in love, even more than I already loved your work. I fell in love with your workshop.
Thank you.
Because you're just really, really fantastic at what you do. Other than being a great actor, I don't want to call you an acting coach because you're so much more than a coach. But I fell in love with your acting workshop. It was a life-changing experience to me.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
It really was.
And I see that world. I mean, that's why I don't call myself an acting coach. And for me, I come from it at a very different paradigmatic direction, journey. I think that the way that we've built the pedagogy or the teaching of acting in the West is very, it's never agreed with me, and I never went to drama school. And so for me, I come from a tradition of storytellers in ancient Africa. Those were called griots, and the griots would be the storytellers of the clan, and they would remember the lineage of everybody in the clan going back hundreds of years, and they would tell the stories, the biggest stories. Who was the greatest wrestler? Who was the most amazing farmer? Who, was the wealthy? All of these great stories of the wars and the battles, and in a very kind of is it homoerotic as in Homer, or is that homoerotic? But as like epic poetry in terms of Homer, way before the Greeks, there were these wonderful storytellers, and I come out of that tradition. And the way that I work is as somebody I have a good eye and a good ear, and I don't believe acting can be taught. Because I didn't go to school, but I do have a good eye, and I know how to open someone's gate.
I completely agree.
I know
with you.
how to jailbreak through to that space where they feel a sense of, oh my God, oh wow, I'm somewhere else, you know, and it also frees me. And so for me, I mean, whether you call that a creative doula, like a creative midwife or something, I'm not sure, but it's definitely not a coach. Also, when I say it's not a coach, because I'm in the game, I have skin in the game, and skin in the game for me means I'm also growing, I'm also evolving. I also have to come to the mat, as it were, you know, and submit and surrender. And so I'm not coming from a place in my workshops of I'm somebody who knows it all, that it can pass through me to liberate others, and that liberation liberates me.
I love that, and I completely agree with you. I personally don't think acting is something that you teach someone. You either have that bug and that thing within you, the flame. But yeah, once, at least for me and all of my friends that I took, they all agree. There were actors there, all kinds of levels, and they all say, like, once they get in touch with you, like, yes, you open the gates of wanting to act and put the emotions out there. It is definitely a life-changing experience. But let's start from the beginning for people that don't know you. But I know a lot of, we're going to talk about your fantastic body of work, but let's start from the beginning of your career. Was acting something that you always wanted to do from the get-go? Did you always feel like, that's it, that's my calling?
I don't know if I knew then at such a young age that it was something that could be a calling, but I think it was something that I always felt did something for me that nothing else did. Like, I loved words, and I always found it, my facility for words just came quite easily, and I took it for granted. And you know, my mum was incredibly perceptive, and so from a very young age, from 5, 6, she was actually enrolling me in acting classes when I was about 6, 7. And there is a place in London called Drury Lane, and there was a kind of famous, I don't know if she's probably still is around, but her name was Anna Scher, and my mum used to take me to her classes. And it turned out that a lot of those people who would go to those classes ended up being in movies like all these years later. So she was quite reputable. And I just something about it was very freeing. And then when I got into school, again, I attracted a really great, I mean, I say attracted because I wonder if these things are about attraction, you know. And this teacher in my drama school, hi, Mrs. Brett, I hope she's still around, or Miss Brett then. But she was great. She just like took a hold of me, and under her tutelage, whenever it was drama, I was the one who was helping her produce the shows, direct them. If I wasn't the lead, then I was, you know, a great role in them. And so straight away I was given this. And then she said, look, across the street, there's a youth theater. And I think you should go. I was about 13. And I went, and I ended up going almost every night till I was 16. It was changed my life. And then from that, I just felt straight away. I was about 14. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. But it was all exceptional moments in my life, exceptional people as well, who came in and said, take this direction. And I took that direction. And I was touring with this youth theatre company. We were touring the Czech Republic with plays at like 15 years old, touring Eastern Europe.
That's incredible.
And I'm from this very working class place in London, and I was going on tour with these and being introduced to these great writers at 13, 14, Chekhov, and I'd already been quite into Shakespeare at school, but also African writers as growing up in the UK as a black person. It was great finding out, and it was there that I found out about people like James Baldwin, Wole Soyinka, really great playwrights. And that all changed my life. So by the time I was like 16, I dropped out of school and went, okay, I'm ready to become
That's
an
it.
actor.
I'm
That's
an
it,
actor.
you know?
I'm an actor.
Yeah, I just saw myself as that.
That's amazing. And you worked in some incredible franchises, very, very, very famous, worldwide successful box office franchises. For people that don't know, maybe now they're listening, you guys can go and Google his name and look, you're gonna see his face, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I've seen him. And it's interesting because you look so different in each character. You are a chameleon. It's incredible. You did Jumanji, you did Pirates of the Caribbean, you did Alien, and of course we're gonna talk about one of the most famous of them all, Game of Thrones. Okay. Right? I mean, you did all these fantastic franchises. Can you tell us a little bit, how did you get into all of that, from theater jumping into all of these fantastic movies?
Really auditioning, really.
It starts by like just auditioning?
Well, it starts by doing all the things I said before, which I think is really, for me, accrued that kind of what do you call it? I'm not sure what that word is. I had all of this stuff in escrow because I could walk out in the world and know that I was an actor. I didn't go to drama school, and I didn't go to university, and I didn't go to college. And I really credit those youth theatres that I went to that were in rundown areas, you know, poor areas, run by really dedicated theatre practitioners then, instilling in me this even though I had a lot of fear, you know, it wasn't like I was walking around going, because I was, you know, auditioning with people who'd gone to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, Juilliard, who'd come out of Cambridge, you know, who had been fast-tracked through private schools and all these things. But I always knew that I had a right to be there. So when I left...
Wait, you said something so important. I'm going to interrupt you. I love that. You said, I always knew I had the right to be there.
Yes.
I love that. So you always had this confidence?
I don't know if it didn't feel to me like confidence, because I had a lot of fear. I remember when I got into the Royal Shakespeare Company, and that was a big thing, because I had been doing theatre. I'd been doing professional theatre, and I'd got, it's called the SAG card here, Screen Actors Guild, was very similar to the equity card then. I got into the union when I was like 18, quite early. And then I got into the Royal Shakespeare Company, and that was like everybody who was everybody that you see on TV now was there. And I just felt like a fish out of water. I felt so scared. But something in me just knew that, even as scared as I was, you know, I'd never studied Shakespeare, but I knew I could do it, right?
I love that.
Just knew it, and because I had a feel for it. but I knew, even though everybody was there and I felt, I was absolutely fearful, something in me just said, just stick it out. It's hard, but stick it out. And in terms of stick out the fear. So I started doing in that world of getting into theatre, and it was from that theatre that casting directors come to shows, and so they see you, and then they ask, could we'd like him to audition for this or stuff like that, and so I would audition for, also think in London at the time, in the UK at the time, a lot of American shows would come out, movies and stuff would come out to the UK to cast.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, because I think they see British actors as cheaper.
Oh really?
It's a different union. Like Screen Actors Guild, you got to pay more, you got to pay into their health, you got to pay into their equity. Sorry, they're not so good.
Not
such
so
a good
much.
Union, But also I think that when you're kind of aligned in that space, then you kind of do attract those things. And to be honest, listen, I love all that stuff. I loved doing it, and to work with people like Baz Luhrmann and Tim Burton, the Russo brothers and really great directors, David Fincher. But I never felt, for me, that I have really started working yet. For me, I haven't felt that. It's only as I'm starting to create my work and write, and also in a way step out of playing just archetypes. A lot of that work for me, I feel, isn't very hard for me, and I understand what the commercial market is,
right. But
I also felt that I gave myself, because it's like climbing the ladder in one's career, but also it cost me at the time, because I don't want to play archetypes anymore. I know I can play archetypes, and most of those shows I'm playing an archetype.
So if you got offered similar roles today, would you decline them? Or
I think where I am now is understanding that, because then it was like, oh my God, yeah, great, I'm doing Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm doing,
because that's very, like you said, let's be honest, that's very prestigious.
Of course, yeah.
It's very commercial.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not like a dream role in terms of the acting, the meat.
Yeah.
But it like for a resume, that's like insanely prestigious, right?
It is. And so there obviously, yes, there is. But I also think I feel we live in a very different world now, and I feel that, my parents, they came from Nigeria to London, to the UK. They came out of the Biafran War. There was a war in Nigeria in the 60s, and it was pretty horrendous. And my family are Igbo, and the Igbos wanted to cede from Nigeria and create their own state called Biafra, and that caused just a horrible civil war. So my parents came out of this kind of situation, and their mind was just, just wanting to do well, wanting their children to do well. So I grew up with that. I grew up with the sense of be grateful for what you get and just go like that. And I think the world's changed now, and the world's changed a lot, where one understands that, well, certainly for me, I should say, I understand that not just I have every right to be here, but I have every right to create my own stories. I didn't have that when I was coming out the gate. I felt I had to fit into the stories of the status quo. I had to fit into those commercial stories. Not that I don't have stories that are not commercial, but I felt like I had to fit into a certain mold. Now I understand, you mean I can write my own stories. I can talk about the world from my point of view. I didn't have that then, and I have that now. And so in having that now, I think it's incumbent upon me to not play archetypes.
I see.
It's very easy, and I think that's across the board in the industry. It's like your type, big, black, male presenting, here you are, you're the general, you're the monosyllabic, monotone, blonde, big boobs, you're the cute, dumb blonde, whatever that is, all those, that's what the business is, until you get to be a name. And I realized, I got to start saying no.
Yeah.
I have to learn to start saying no and to create the yes.
I love that. No, and I hear you, because I think stereotypes happen to on so many different people. Like even for me,
Yes,
ever since I've been a little girl, people say to me, "You don't look Latin. You don't look Latin. You don't look Latin. You don't look Latin." And I said, "What do you mean? You know, what are we supposed to look like? Oh, you don't have black hair. You're not dark. You don't have a big ass." I've lost so many roles. To this day, I lose roles because I'm not a brunette. And I'm just as Latin as any Latin actress. So I keep fighting the stereotypes because it's not about like what we look like.
Yes.
So I completely understand how you feel. And I see that happening to so many different people from so many different backgrounds. And I love that you're saying that, because I think as storytellers, and we are, other than actors, we love writing and we love telling stories. We got to keep fighting for it. As much as, of course, let's be honest, sometimes we take commercial jobs because they pay really well.
Of course.
And it gives you like fantastic credit on IMDb and blah, 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 blah. But when we are telling stories, we also got to fight for, you know, just to play something that we want to play for whatever reasons, that it doesn't have to be the stereotype of what people want you to look like, you know? So I love that you're saying that. And I want to talk about, you do have a project that you wrote.
Oh, yes, I did write a play. Yes,
You
I did. I
wrote
wrote a play.
a play.
Yes, for a theatre called the Royal Court in London. And when I wrote that play, and so when I said that I didn't know I could do that, I did know I could do that. But I wrote a play a little while ago now, and it got put on, it got produced, really great theatre. And I loved that experience. And what I did was, I was quite spoilt. You know, the play got on very quickly. I wrote it. The Royal Court is a prestigious theatre. And I was very spoilt. I was kind of like, well, why isn't this play transferring to the West End? The West End is like the British version of Broadway. And I was impatient. And I was like talking to the artistic director at the time, why isn't my play transferring? And I got him to get me a meeting with a guy called George C. Wolfe, who actually directed, I think George C. Wolfe directed American Fiction and a bunch of things. He was running a theatre I forgot the theatre he was running in New York. But I met him and I was like, I wanted to get my play on. And he met me, you know, and he was like, yeah, but I think your play is very London and I don't think we can, he was very encouraging. But when I look back on all that now, I just go, God, she was just so spoiled, because I'd come out the gate as an actor, and then, you know, my first movie was Alien 3, and then it was this, and then it was always projects that were quite, you know, really good TV stuff. And so I just thought, you know, like, I'm not waiting another 7-8 years as a writer to get my, you know. And so what I did was I ran back to acting. You know, I ran back to movies. I think I did that, and then I ran back and did some schlock movie with Wesley Snipes. You know, I ran back to do, I think it's called Seven. It's on DVD now, straight to DVD. But that's kind of where, you know, and I forgive myself for it. But now I realize, you know, and people then at the time was like, do you know how big it is to have a play on at the Royal Court? This is huge, your first play, it's getting produced, it's getting published. But in some ways, I didn't kind of know. Not that if things had come to me easily, they'd come quickly. They came very fast as an actor.
That's amazing.
Very, very fast. And so it's only now that I'm writing, and I'm writing a lot now, that I understand, you know, because I had my glut, you know, I did the movies, and still am, you know, but, you know, I've been working with big names, so-called big, you know, I can't stand that term, big names, you know, it's like, we're all big names, right? But in terms of in the industry, and realizing, to be honest with you, is that all there is? And often when you're working at the highest level, it's those people who are, I wouldn't say the most humble, but the most focused on the work, not the ego. You know, so it's projects like Game of Thrones and stuff where you're working with real artisans.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's brilliant. Everyone's really great at what they do, the costume, the props. You know, it's not about this. It's just about creating something really. And that's where I went, but that's who I am.
Teamwork, right?
Teamwork, but also it's not just about delivering something to get a paycheck or to get you're really connected to it. and it's coming from somewhere. You know, you want to tell stories, and I realized, oh my God, that's who I am. So why aren't I telling my own stories? And then I had to get over the fact of going, it doesn't matter what platform it's on. It doesn't matter if it's not at the most prestigious theatre, or it's not the biggest budget. You know, if it's just 200 and if it's just $1 million or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's like, what stories have you got to tell? Because you have to tell them. And that really got me back writing. That really got me to start pedestalizing, probably not the right word, it's not probably not a word, but putting on a pedestal the kind of big projects that I'd done, because I saw that it, you know, at the heart of it, it's all about telling stories.
I love that, and I completely agree, especially when it comes to theater, because theater is like so tough. It's a million times harder than making movies. So congratulations. I think that's fantastic. But I gotta ask you, because when I told, you know, my audience and so many of my friends that I was going to interview, people want to know, how was your experience working on Game of Thrones? Did you have fun?
I did.
You did 2 seasons, right?
2 seasons. I mean, again, for me, it was just checking in, checking out. You know, it was just But I did have fun. Where
did you guys shoot? In Europe, right?
Yeah, Croatia, Spain, which was amazing.
Pretty nice places.
Oh yeah, beautiful. There was a beautiful castle somewhere in Spain. I think Seville. Just stunning. Just
magical.
Stunning. And yeah, it was a really fun experience. But you know, it also kind of. I mean, I don't want to burst people's bubbles, but you see things as well which are like, really? Like, I remember being with a couple of actors, and you know, it was just weird. Suddenly you go into a hotel and everyone's screaming, and I was like, but I've walked into hotels before. Suddenly everyone's just screaming at you, but they're screaming at you because of what they project onto you.
You mean fans?
Well, like, yeah, a day before, nobody was screaming at me and suddenly it got announced or something, and then everyone started screaming, and then I found that weird. I did.
Really?
I did. Yeah, I did, because I just felt like that's all about projection, because I'm the same person.
Oh, of course. I mean, if the series, they have like so many fans, and they see that you're, you know, shooting there and everything, they fall in love with you, and they fall in love with the character, of course.
Yeah, but fame, a lot of it is projection. I felt.
Oh, for sure.
I felt a lot of
but
it
you
was
never
projection.
had this happen to you ever before in anything else that you worked on?
I think that was another level. That was, I think because the show was such a juggernaut.
Yeah.
And that was like another level of walking to places and seeing people staked out. I mean, I did do a film. I did a Guy Ritchie movie a few years ago, and I got papped. And then I saw myself in the Daily Mail. And that was really weird. That was like, I was just walking into a trailer, and it was like, DéObia Oparéi walks into his, like, I was just like...
They took a picture of you.
Yeah, and then it was like a whole page or half a page.
And how do you feel about that? It doesn't affect you
It's
either
smoke
way,
and
right?
mirrors.
Yeah.
It's the emperor with no clothes.
I agree.
You know, it's not, it has, for me, the value that it has is attention.
Yeah.
That's the value it has. And that's where it's great, when that attention meets opportunity, and there's something to say and a story to tell or something to offer. I think that's wonderful. And it's a beautiful confluence of fame or name acclaim and the work. So in that sense, it does. It has great value. And I do think that there is something to do with cultivating, even though we live in a 24/7 media, social media world, there is something interesting about cultivating a sense of enigma and mystery about oneself. But whether who you are, I don't think you have to tell everything, and I don't think everything has to be known. And you know, there is something attractive about, you know.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to say everything.
I completely agree with you. I think it's a big part of our jobs that we have to use social media and be in the media. And like you said, usually the more attention you get a bigger audience, and it could lead to jobs, and that's our job as communicators. But yeah, you can always keep something private and still have a private life, and it's a game, right? We have to juggle and try to figure out how to...
Yeah, but it's also not just about keeping it private and private life, for me, it's also about that the embers, the ingredients of a story. It's important sometimes to keep things in the dark, because things grow very powerfully in the dark. And this, and as much as it's a paradox too, because I think transparency is wonderful. And I think that, the transparency that I've seen online has been very liberating, because you can find your community and your community can grow you, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ community, you can find people who go, oh, okay, great. And we are aligned politically, and because that was very hard pre-social media. So transparency and that stuff is great, but also the other is true too, is that you can grow things very powerfully in the dark, and the darkness is important. And this, I read on sometimes online, there's this whole thing about, oh, that's so wholesome. But that's the whole thing, is that for me, stories and making great stories, you don't want it to be wholesome. Because it's not about being wholesome, right? It's about everything. It's about the things that we term bad, things that we term ugly. It's about nuance. It's about subtlety, and sometimes all of that gets lost when everything is here I am, ba-da, every day. And sometimes it's like
so true.
The nuance, the quiet kind of, multidimensionality of what it means to be a living being in the world.
Yes.
Doesn't mean that you can paint everything by colors and say, this is this emotion and that's that. Yeah. There's contradiction.
Yes.
There's things that will not agree with you. Do you understand? There's madness, there's depression, there's anger, there's joy, there's sex. Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh my God, yeah.
And I feel like social media, it's all about defanging that.
Yeah.
Let me wrap everything up into this kind of hygienic, bleached, sterile kind of, it's like, that's
oh, yeah.
I can't live in that world.
I love that. I want to touch on a subject that is a lot more personal to you, but it's also something that I loved that you put out there during your workshop, and I think it's so important.
Yeah.
Was an acting workshop, but you mentioned and you told your story, which is very public, that many years ago, I forgot the year, you came out and you told the world that you're a very proud gay man. And you told the story, and that's the part of the story that really touched me, because I love people that I think it's one of the biggest lessons that we all learn, is like to be our authentic selves.
Yeah.
Because so many times it's hard, like say, this is who I am, this is what makes me happy. And when you do that, like, it's a whole other world, right?
Yeah.
And you told the story in the class, and it made me very emotional. That one day, and of course I don't want to put words in your mouth, and you can tell the story again if you feel like it, because it's such a beautiful story, how you decided, like, you know what, and you're, by the way, guys, if you don't know him, please go to his social media, go to my social media channels, look at the videos, because you're a very handsome man. You're huge. You're 6'6", 6'5", right? You're very tall, very good looking, a very impressive image when you walk by. And one day you said, you know what, I'm going to wear a skirt because that's what I love. I'm going to wear whatever makes me happy.
Yeah, I've changed a lot and evolved a lot since then, and I'm constantly evolving. And I think I think that that's what being alive is, and often that's what opening oneself up is. And as I am continually opening myself up, I identify as non-binary. I don't identify as a gay man, because and that was the George Floyd kind of time when that happened, and those race riots. What was the catalyst for me was walking on the street in Los Angeles saying Black Lives Matter. And then as I said it, I could feel, oh yes, but your life doesn't matter, because you're here hiding, and you're here not being honest about who you are. And then for me, that meant coming out as a gay man, because that was what was available to me. And as I've stood more and more in the river, because I wouldn't for me anymore call it about authenticity, but for the river of being alive, of being a living being, and understanding that we live in a culture, we live in a paradigm where we have to be identified by the physical. The physical identifies you. That makes you white. That makes you black. That makes you gay. And to me, I understand how that is just a construction, and that my identity isn't within me. That for me, identity is out there, and it's constantly changing, and in that, I also understood as I've become so much more open, that for me, gender is a construct. It's constructed, and so for me also, as I've delved more into who I am in terms of ancestrally, or where I've come from ancestrally, in terms of indigeneity. And I don't mean for me, because if you know about Africa, it's incredibly, especially Ghana, Nigeria, and those countries that have criminalized LGBTQ rights. It's incredibly patriarchal. But I mean post-colonial, pre-colonial Africa. Certainly in my mother's people, in their culture, the Igbos, there was no word for gender. My mum constantly used to, I have 3 brothers. She constantly would move between he and she. Constantly. Oh. Where is she? Where is she? Tell her dinner's ready. There was no, because firstly, the language that Igbos speak was rewritten by a missionary. So the language that they speak has actually been anglicized, the Igbo language. But pre that, I think Igbo and Yoruba, 2 different kind of ethnicities, had no word for gender, and gender wasn't chosen at birth. It was something that happened in your maturity, in your adolescence. This is pre-colonial, and so that's all in me. But also an understanding that when I was coming out as an actor, I knew that this was racial capital. I knew that I could walk into a room and blow people away with, yo, motherfucker. I knew I could do all those voices. I knew I could do that. I knew I could play that. And so I thought, if I'm myself, because I live in I didn't have these words, but I understand it now, because I feel like we live in a very mediocre culture. We look at people and go, oh, you're this, and we call you flamboyant, and therefore you can only play that role, which is bullshit, right? Or oh, you sleep with men, therefore you could never be convincing enough on all that crap. And so I played that, I was playing that role in my life, not to my friends, but when it came to casting directors, and I had certain agents at the time who would say, take off this when you go in the room, and who would go, make sure
they
you don't.
Would try to control you,
and I understood
the way
it.
you're dressed and the way you portrayed yourself.
I understood it, because in a way you do have to cut the garment according to the cloth. Not that I would walk into the room completely wearing, if I'm going for a certain role, so I understood that, but also it kind of bled into an understanding for the actor. A lot of actors are in the closet, not just, a lot of actors.
Oh my God, I know.
And I understand it because there's so much
many more than anybody. And it kills me, like this culture of hiding behind, like not being able to be yourself. Can
I just finish off the point?
Please.
That for me, that was a stepping stone to be able to say, I don't want to play who I am in these movies or on TV in life. I've paid my dues, right? I can transform into, I have, as it's called, range, right? I can play. That's not a problem for me. So if I show up like this, that's down, for me, it was me telling, that's down to them. That's down to that culture. And but also the reason why I did and have stopped calling myself a gamer, even though I love the gay community, and because I also found that it was very much not aligned with who I am. Gay, for me, gay and heterosexual, they're both sides of the same coin. of the same coin. And there's a kind of, whether it's heteronormativity or homonormativity, there's this alliance between the two that play kind of, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but I didn't find freedom in that. I didn't find freedom in that. And I think there's something more bold and something more not as, it's certainly not, for me, where I stand now is I'm walking into a space and a place where I get to be in the world and I get to discover this being that, yes, someone may tell me whatever gender, doesn't worry me. I can use every single kind of pronoun. I prefer cupcake. I prefer beautiful, gorgeous, all those things, right? Don't call me man, don't call me bro. But I just think that the world is changing because we're all waking up. Yeah. And realizing there are so many, we live in this world where everything is called with a heterosexual name. You're an uncle, you're an aunt, and everything's on this linear timeline. And I disagree with that. I disagree with that.
I do too. But I always feel, I always feel every time I see you, and every time on your workshops, you always read something really beautiful. Like you pick something like a poem, or you say something out of your mind that you always send a message of acceptance. And to me, that's like you have such a beautiful soul. Like it doesn't matter, like you said, it shouldn't matter whatever people want to call themselves, but it's always about like accepting who you are and being your most authentic self. And I think this is why. But
I actually feel we're more than one self. I feel that we change.
Yeah,
and
of
I think
course.
Authenticity. I think there's authenticity, but there's also being alive, and I think they're two different things. I think, for instance, I'm reading this great philosopher. Great. I mean, he probably wouldn't call himself great. I think he's brilliant. His name's Achille Mbembe, and Cameroonian, and he's brilliant. And he talks about, I forgot the book, Out of the Dark. Recommend that book, Out of the Dark. And he talks about how the ancient Africans, they didn't seek identity in their physicality. They sought relationality to the world. Everything had consciousness. This is years before quantum physics. Everything had consciousness. So it was a conversation. You were in a conversation with the cosmos. Your being was ever changing. It was in a conversation with that rock, with that bark, with that tree. They knew that everything. Now we know that trees are social. Now we know that the rhizomes or rhizomes, rhizomes, the roots that go right down into the earth are communicating with their cousins, are communicating with other family trees, literally, and feeding certain trees water that are going thirsty, that are of the same lineage. It's fascinating. But these ancient indigenous people knew all that. And so their sense of being in the world was about their relationality with the world. And I feel that we've reduced everything down to, oh, you're this. Oh, you're wearing a skirt, so you're this. These ridiculous, reductive, infantile terms to describe this incredibly mysterious, enigmatic journey that we're on called life. We reduce it down to the most ridiculous, do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Definitions. If you walk like this, if you move like this, if you sound like that, you're this.
Yeah.
And I really, really reject that.
I love that. That's really nice. What's next for you?
What's next for me?
Are you here? Are you based here now? Are you based in London? Are you back and forth?
I'm back and forth. I mean, I am here. I love LA. LA is really good.
LA loves you.
LA loves you too. LA's great. I feel like there's a real sense here. I mean, people down LA, but I find that California, there is an air where you get to really explore and open your mind. California's really open to that. Yeah. And I've loved that. And the sun.
Yes.
The sun.
Yes. Can't beat this weather.
The weather.
The weather.
Aren't we lucky? I get spoiled when I go.
I know. I'm not going to say anything about the weather in London. I promise.
Where are you based?
Here.
Okay.
Yeah, I live right here in Beverly Hills.
Oh, right.
I'm an LA. I'm a California girl.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you love it?
I love it. Yes. I cannot. Yeah, that's home. I love traveling, but yeah, this is home.
Wow.
So you're hanging out. So if somebody wants to know, because like I said, I'm a huge fan of your workshops. I think if anybody is in the LA, because that's where you do the workshops, is in LA,
well,
right?
I'm kind of also mobile, so I'll be spending
Yeah.
some time in London. I've got some funding, and I'm getting more for a film project that I'm putting out there. As you can tell, I'm tentative because I prefer to announce it in the right way.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's happening, and London, Los Angeles.
So if people want to find you and figure out, like, if you have any workshops coming up, how do they find you?
Instagram right now.
Okay,
Instagram.
I'm going to put his links
Okay.
on the link of this episode and also on my website, catondeluz.com, so you guys can find him. And if you happen to be lucky enough to be in LA or London, I highly recommend you go do one of his workshops, because like I said, to me, it was like just your energy and your message and just being around you is like, to me, it was life-changing. I love you. I adore you. It's such an honor to have you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
And I wish you all the success in the world. Congratulations on everything you do. You are absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
DéObia, we did this.
We
Finally,
did it.
right?
We did it.
It only took me 3 years to get you here.
Really 3 years?
I think so. Like with this COVID chaos, like time flies
It was
by.
before COVID.
It was. I remember. No, it was literally like the Soho House had just reopened.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I don't even know. It was like. I think it was like almost. It was like just about. I think it was the first workshop you did just like when they reopened. So I'm gonna.
Yes,
I'm
you're
gonna
right. You're
guess
right.
like around 3 years.
Wow.
So I hope it doesn't take another 3 years to get you back. Thank you so much. It was such an honor.
pleasure.
You are incredible.
Thank you.
I like, you know how they say in Hollywood, I'll see you at the Oscars. 'Cause I'm sure one of these days you're going to win one.
I feel it.
Yeah, I feel it. I feel it. I think it's in your destiny.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You're incredible.
Thank you so much.
And I'll see you guys very soon. DéObia Oparéi. Take care.